Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brandon. Welcome back to Marotta Media. Today's review is a video that I have been looking forward to for over a year now, because today I will be doing a dual review of the movie event of the summer that took the world by storm, Barbenheimer. That, of course, referring to the two films Barbie and Oppenheimer, two movies that were announced early last year were going to be released on the same day, and since then it has taken on a cultural meme status. And like most people, I was beyond ecstatic to watch both of these movies. I couldn't wait. So do both of them live up to the hype? Well, I'm gonna let you know in this video. So let's start with the first half of Barbenheimer. Barbie. In Barbie, we follow Margot Robbie as stereotypical Barbie, and she soon realizes that she is slowly beginning to have some sort of existential crisis that requires her to go to the real world to find what her purpose is. So before I get into my thoughts on this movie, I just need to say my screening of Barbie was pretty nuts. I went and saw this movie on a Wednesday because there were these early promotions for something called Barbie's Blowout Party, and I jumped on that as soon as I saw that they were available. But my screening for this movie was insane because it was packed as soon as my friend and I got there. There were tons of women wearing pink and a fair share of men wearing pink as well. My theater was doing a special promotion where they were going to give you a special pink alcoholic beverage. I don't really drink, so I can't attest to how the drink tasted because to me it was probably disgusting. And then when we made our way into the actual theater where the movie was playing, there was music blasting over the speakers. They were playing a lot of songs from the Barbie soundtrack, and there were QR codes on the screen that was encouraging the audience to post pictures of the event. So it really was like a little party at the movies on a Wednesday night. As I said, I was excited for Barbie for well over a year, but as the date I was going to watch it drew closer, I began to worry that this movie was not going to meet my expectations. Because I did see some early reactions that said this movie was really bad, and that's when I started to get nervous. I thought, what if I hyped myself up for over a year and the movie turned out to be terrible? Thankfully, that was not the case, because I think Barbie is a really good movie, and I had a lot of fun with it. So let's get the obvious out of the way first. Barbie has some pretty fantastic performances. The two leads, Margot Robbie as Barbie and Ryan Gosling as Ken, they were both fantastic. I really can't think of a more perfect casting choice for those characters than those two actors. And they both have their own story arcs and journeys of self-discovery. This movie is not all about Barbie, because Ken gets a lot of screen time as well, but both of them I think are perfectly balanced. But it's not just those two. This is a loaded cast. Other actors in this movie include Issa Rae, Emma Mackey, Kate McKinnon, Will Ferrell, Simu Liu. But aside from our two leads, I personally think that the two standouts performance-wise were Michael Cera and America Ferrera. Michael Cera plays Alan, who's supposedly Ken's best friend. Now, I was not familiar with the Alan doll, but I think it's really cool that the movie referenced it. But I think Michael Cera stole the show in every single scene that he was in. And it was so refreshing to see him in a movie again. I truly can't remember the last movie that I saw him in. It feels like it's been a long time. And America Ferrera plays a human in the real world named Gloria. And going off the previews, I did not think that she was going to play an integral part of the story, but I was wrong. She plays a huge part in it. And from a technical standpoint, this movie is phenomenal. The production design, specifically in terms of Barbie Land, is some of the most incredible, innovative, and creative set design I have ever seen. But I was worried because the movie started off in Barbie Land, and then obviously Barbie and Ken make their way to the real world. And when I saw previews for this movie, I thought that the majority of the movie was going to take place in the real world. But to my surprise, most of the movie does take place in Barbie Land. But I can't say enough about these sets, because even though I'm a guy and I did not grow up playing with Barbies, I was able to recognize these choices that they made when it came to designing the houses and the streets. The houses in Barbie Land have absolutely no walls or anything, and the attention to detail they had by having Barbie float off of her roof was a nice touch, because if a little girl is playing with a Barbie doll, obviously she's not going to make her Barbie walk down the stairs, she's going to have her float from the roof to the ground. And it's little things like that that show they put a lot of thought and effort into the logistics of how this world works. The cinematography was a lot better than I expected as well. There were quite a few shots where I said to myself, wow, that is an absolutely stunning looking shot. Especially one towards the end of the movie that I thought was just gorgeous. The costumes also looked amazing. I've seen a lot of articles and tweets pointing out that the Barbie's outfits in the movie are based off of actual outfits that a Barbie doll in real life has. And again, the attention to detail is just amazing. Barbie also has a pretty fantastic soundtrack. There are so many memorable songs on here, and a few of them are absolute bangers. Like the song Dance the Night by Dua Lipa. I don't dance at all, but that song makes me want to get up and dance. It's just so funky and catchy. And there's also a fair share of emotional songs, such as What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish, which perfectly encapsulates the themes and overall message of the movie. And then there's hilarious rock power ballads like I'm Just Ken, which Ryan Gosling sings himself, and he absolutely kills it. But if you went into this movie thinking that it was just going to be a generic film about Barbie, then that is not what you are going to get here. This movie is a lot deeper than I thought it would be, going over themes of like feminism, existentialism, and the complex relationship between mothers and daughters. But that's not to say that the movie is all serious, because there is a fair share of humor, and I personally thought that this movie was funny as hell. Especially the joke that ended the movie. Literally the last line spoken, I thought was absolutely hysterical. Now, even though I really did enjoy this movie, Barbie does have quite a few issues. Right from the beginning, it was very evident to me that this movie was paced very quickly, because it seemed like a lot of the conflicts are established almost immediately with no real build-up. For example, the thoughts that Barbie starts to have regarding her own mortality seem to just come out of nowhere. Like, we meet the character, and then just randomly she's like, hey, do you guys ever think about dying? Maybe that was a purposeful thing, but I don't know. It felt like there wasn't any sort of build-up to it. I feel like they should have just slightly mentioned it at the beginning, and then the thoughts start to get slowly more intense. And with the themes that this movie goes over, you would expect it to have some very political-oriented messages. And let me tell you, Barbie is a very, very political movie. Now, I am not a political person by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I try to avoid politics if at all possible. But I'm not against movies having political messages in them. I only have a problem if you are just so heavy-handed with what you are trying to say. And Barbie is nothing short of heavy-handed. It's very obvious what this movie is trying to say, and at times it feels like it's almost as if it's talking at the audience rather than to them. Almost as if it's trying to manipulate you into feeling a certain way rather than you feeling that way naturally because of the way the movie conveyed its message. It's just very ham-fisted, and there were quite a few moments where I personally found it distracting. And my last huge complaint about this movie is Will Ferrell. Not Will Ferrell himself, because I thought he was a really good casting choice for the role that he was put in. He plays the CEO of Mattel, who's trying to get Barbie back into Barbie Land before it's revealed to the public that a Barbie doll somehow made her way into the real world, because I guess that this has happened before. But I talked to one of my friends after I watched this movie, and he pointed out to me that Will Ferrell's character seemed very pointless in the grand scheme of things. He said if Will Ferrell's character wasn't there, then absolutely nothing would have changed. And I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? He's absolutely right. If Will Ferrell was completely absent from this movie, then it would have been exactly the same. And there was even a time during the movie where his character feels like he was completely forgotten. Because he's doing something that gives you the illusion that it's important, but then the movie just seems to completely forget that he exists. And the entire time he was gone, I was sitting there wondering, what happened to Will Ferrell's character? Where is he at? But that's pretty much all the big complaints that I had about this movie. Overall, I really did enjoy Barbie. I thought that this was a great movie, and it was a lot of fun. The story can get a little bit sloppy at times, and it's incredibly ham-fisted with its message. But it is still a great movie, and I can definitely understand why so many people are as touched by this movie as they are. And overall, I would give Barbie an 8 out of 10. Alright, now let's talk about the second movie to make up one half of Barbenheimer. Oppenheimer. But in Oppenheimer, we follow the titular character J. Robert Oppenheimer, played by Cillian Murphy, who is credited as the father of the atomic bomb that was eventually dropped on Japan during World War II. So this is Christopher Nolan's first movie since Tenet, which came out in 2020. And Tenet is a movie that I absolutely loved. A lot of people hate it and think it's Nolan's worst movie, but I thought it was so much fun. But at the same time, I definitely understand why people wouldn't like it, because it is a little bit too difficult to follow at times, and the story is just nonsense at points. But that didn't affect me at all, because I really do enjoy that movie. But when I saw that Christopher Nolan was going to make a biopic about the lead scientist of the Manhattan Project, I thought, how is that gonna work? This is the first movie that Christopher Nolan has made about a real person. I mean, he made Dunkirk, but personally, I haven't seen Dunkirk, and I know that's based off true events, but I don't know if anyone in that movie was based on a real person. But all the people featured in Oppenheimer are based off of real people during the time of World War II. Because most of Nolan's movies mess with time, so I was curious how he was going to incorporate that into a biopic. But I think it worked out, because not only is Oppenheimer one of Christopher Nolan's best movies, this is my favorite movie of the year so far. And I'm going to start the same way I started when talking about Barbie. This movie is brilliantly acted. Cillian Murphy gives an absolute career best performance as J. Robert Oppenheimer. And Robert Downey Jr. definitely has the second best performance in this movie as Louis Strauss. I think this is one of his career best performances as well, and it was so nice to see him in something other than a Marvel movie for the first time in forever. But it's not just them. Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, and Florence Pugh all do a phenomenal job when they are on screen. They definitely don't have as much screen time as Cillian Murphy or Robert Downey Jr., but they do a great job when they are there. But this cast as a whole is loaded. There are so many recognizable faces in this movie, and I personally think that worked to its benefit. 3 of the 5 actors I just mentioned were nominated for Oscars, and later on in the movie, I counted 3 Oscar winners who maybe have a total combined screen time of less than 5 minutes. Rami Malek, Gary Oldman, and Casey Affleck all make appearances in this movie, and all of them alone probably have about a minute to a minute and a half of screen time. And I thought that was just amazing that Christopher Nolan was able to get so many A-list actors to work with him. But I think this movie having so many recognizable actors truly worked to its benefit. Because this is a historical drama, so a lot of names are spoken throughout, and it might be a little bit difficult to follow and remember who's who. But as soon as I was able to pair a name with a face, I was perfectly able to remember who the characters were talking about. Because said character was played by an actor that I recognize. It made it so much easier to follow. I don't think that was Christopher Nolan's intention. I think he just truly casted whoever he thought was best for the role, but it really helped, for me at least. And as you can expect from a Nolan film, the technical aspects are just incredible. The editing, first and foremost, is truly superb. It seamlessly cuts back and forth between these scenes that are in color and black and white, showcasing the different points of view between Oppenheimer and Louis Strauss. The cinematography looked amazing, and on top of that, the visual effects are just jaw-dropping. Nolan himself has said that there are 0 CGI shots in this movie, and I just find that amazing when you consider the things that they were able to pull off. And once again, the score for this movie is just amazing. Ludwig Göransson returns to work with Nolan after working with him on Tenet, And one thing about Tenet that I feel everybody can agree on is that movie had a kick-ass score. And Göransson once again proved that he is one of the best in the business working today with this score. I would be shocked if this movie did not win Best Original Score at the Oscars next year. And all of these aspects come together beautifully in one specific scene. The scene that everybody is talking about, and that was the Trinity test. And if you're not familiar, the Trinity test is when all of the scientists on the Manhattan Project came together and tested the bomb they were building for the first time. And let me tell you, this scene is truly one of the greatest sequences of filmmaking that I have ever witnessed. Every aspect came together so perfectly in this moment. Nolan's direction, the editing, the acting, the score, the visual effects of the actual explosion. It was just so incredible to watch unfold on screen in 70mm, which I also need to add looked incredible because the 70mm picture took up the entire IMAX screen. But the funny thing about this whole Trinity test sequence is that I knew how this scene was going to play out, but yet I felt like I was practically holding my breath because it was just that intense. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was just amazing. But it's not just that scene where the anxiety and pressure really run high, because this movie truly gives you an inside look at Oppenheimer's mind and everything he was dealing with. You could truly feel the weight that was on his shoulders, and it's amazing that this man just didn't lose his mind throughout this whole process. There's only really one complaint that I have with Oppenheimer, and it's such a minuscule thing. There were just maybe 2 or 3 shots that I noticed that looked like they were out of focus, but other than that, I really didn't have any problems with this movie. I've heard some people complain that Christopher Nolan's old sound mixing issues have returned. That was a problem I definitely noticed in Tenet, where the sound effects and music overpowered the dialogue, so you couldn't understand what people were saying. And I had heard people complain that the same thing was happening in this movie, but I personally never experienced that. I was able to make out the dialogue in every scene pretty well. But this movie was 3 hours long, and it did not feel like that once. The runtime just breezed by. But yeah, like I said, I really didn't have any issues with this movie. I think Christopher Nolan knocked it out of the park once again. And overall, I would give Oppenheimer a 10 out of 10. I really wish that I could relive this weekend because it was so perfect and it absolutely lived up to the hype. The wait was well worth it. And this weekend was a huge win for theaters, moviegoers, and just the film industry as a whole because both of these movies made bank over the weekend that they premiered. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching my review of Barbenheimer. If you guys saw either of these movies, Barbie or Oppenheimer, did you love them? Did you hate them? And if you loved them both, which one did you like better? If you guys like this review, be sure to hit that thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe. If you want to see my previous reviews, I will link those right over here. Other than that, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your day. I will see you all next time.